Welcome, gentlemen. Very glad you could take your time off the schedule to do this with us. I know you're very, very busy. Welcome and glad to have you here.
Thank you, Seb. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce myself real quick.
Ahead.
My name is Christian Kofari. I am the lead biz developer for Kudelski in the U.S. And I'm based out of the Phoenix office, which is where our headquarters is, our U.S. headquarters anyways. So just bring in new business, not too much on the technical side, but do a lot of client-facing stuff and stay in communication with a lot of the projects we work with. Go ahead, Porter, introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is Porter Adams. I'm also in our Phoenix office. I'm one of the blockchain auditors, and Ken's my boss.
Hey, I'm Ken Toller. I manage the blockchain security services team based out of the U.S. and for Kudelski, and yeah, handling a lot of blockchain security projects and Web3 security projects across the board. So excited to be here.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Miles Nolan. I'm a smart contract auditor based out of the Atlanta office with Kudelski Security, and Ken is also my boss. But glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that intro, guys. I can tell you, I feel a little bit stressed. A lot of pressure here. It feels like I'm going to get audited after this. But I'm really looking forward to this. Kudelski is a very known name in the audit space, so to say. At least within the Solana, it's a really good badge to have your audit on a project, as far as I know. But I'm not the expert here, so I'm really looking forward to learn more about how you guys operate and what it means. What an audit really means.
Sure.
Thanks for the introduction. But who is then really Kudelski, for those who are not acquainted with you guys?
Sure. So Kudelski, a common misconception about us is that we are just a smart contract auditing firm. But in fact, we've been around since 1951, and we started off by building it was our parent company, Nagra. Started off by building audio recording devices that have been all around the globe and even to the moon. So they would send these little recording devices on moon missions to the top of Mount Everest, to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and even on CIA missions that obviously underwent crazy stress tests to survive those conditions. So they started off by building hardware for missions like that. From there, as time progressed, 1980s, and television and cinema became more popular, we started focusing on anti-piracy of content, of digital content. So movies for studios like Paramount and Disney, and even TV stations, news. From there, went into more cybersecurity as the internet became more popular. So Web 1, Web 2 security, you don't need as much Web 1, but Web 2 specifically, we've worked with websites from, any retailer with a website we've done kind of business with, whether it be Target or DraftKings, or just helping, whether it be with the math on the back end of that, or doing stuff like pen testing, making sure that the average user can't break it and manipulate what's on the back end of it. From there, we have a department for Internet of Things that builds kind of gadgets for hardware security, like ledgers, so hardware wallets, and even cars, being able to track cars if you for some reason lose it or it gets stolen. And then now Web3, obviously a big space to be in and lots of potential there. So we're doing that. We work closely with blockchains like Solana, obviously, different VCs that are investing in a lot of these Web3 projects. And as they invest in new things, they obviously want to make sure it's secure, so they send it our way. We audit not only smart contracts, but the front ends. We kind of will help people out, like I mentioned before, with the math on the back end of these things with certain protocols, just to make sure that they are doing what they say they're going to do. and making it safe for VCs to invest their money, not only them, but retail. Because at the end of the day, we're all retail investors. We believe in the space, and we want to make sure it's secure for us and everybody else.
Cool. Well, that's quite a background. It seems to cover a lot of different kind of topics. It's not only blockchain specific, as far as I understood it.
Right. But yeah, so obviously a lot of money there. So we do focus on that. Our team specifically, blockchain. But we have over 4,000 employees. I should have mentioned as well that we're based out of Switzerland, but our U.S. headquarters is in Phoenix, like I mentioned previously.
All right. 4,000 employees. So this is yeah. Okay. Well, that says a lot, I think. But so when it comes to all of these 4,000 employees, I guess that there's a lot of different categories people work on. But what is when it comes to blockchain auditing and so on, what is the skills and background needed to be able to do an audit with you guys, to work with you guys, and what kind of people are suitable for this kind of work?
I'd say our background, a lot of people have a background in application security, which is, well, first of all, actually, we should probably talk a little bit about what an audit means. Is it's different from a financial audit or just in general. Secure code review is kind of how I think about audits sometimes. It's mostly us looking through things by hand. But then the background needed for this is application security is kind of code reviews for more traditional Web 2 applications. And then we have to specialize both in application security and in blockchain. So many of us are very familiar with sort of the internal workings of Solana and making sure that we sort of combine these skill sets. So we try and pull people from a lot of different backgrounds. We are hiring. and we'll try and train you too if you don't have this whole field's so new, blockchain's new. And so blockchain security is even more specific. And so we'll try and teach people depending on your background, try and bring people in.
Cool. So I were a blockchain developer. Let's say I knew how to code in Rust, and I had some years of experience regarding that. I could start working with you guys and go through some kind of onboarding process where I get taught on what to do when it comes to auditing, right?
Yeah, no, that's correct. And I was actually going to piggyback off of Porter's answer. That having experience with smart contract or blockchain development is also a plus, because if you come from a side that's not necessarily security driven, you could use the development knowledge and come in, and we'll pretty much train you and upskill you to look at things from an attacker standpoint. So I think that's the great and awesome thing that Kudelski offers when it comes to onboarding and training people. But yes, definitely having development experience within the blockchain industry is a plus whenever trying to become a smart contract auditor.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I mean, a lot of this is having that tinkering mindset, right? Being able to think about breaking things apart and looking at it through a different lens. There are developers out there. As a developer, your role, your function, your job is to make sure that things are delivered on time and working. And just think about how many hours you put into doing that, and imagine if all those hours were spent trying to break that same thing. That's where we come in. So having that mindset, that lens of being able to pick things apart and look at things in a different way is really important. And then having those other development skills, being able to read code, being able to dynamically test things, that comes into play as well. But it's really just the kind of the lens you use to look at things and evaluate stuff.
Cool. So those listening now or listening to the recording and have that kind of background with development, perhaps Rust or other languages, you can reach out to Kudelski. They are hiring right now, so maybe that would be your new thing. Who knows? But that was quite interesting to understand what kind of person is relevant for this kind of job. And I'm not sure if everybody listening knows this, but you guys did an audit on Solana. And it was quite a long time ago. And you did audits on other notable projects or crypto-related projects as well, of course. But specifically about Solana, like how was that experience of doing an audit and working with the Solana Labs teams and so on? Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, Solana's a great team. I mean, they really take to heart, their community, and they're really concerned about security and take a lot of steps and many steps evaluated across the board from everyone that you can see that delivers an audit for them. And we were, just part of that process. And so I think that having that mindset of being able to actually want to secure your community is really important, and we certainly appreciate that. That experience was a little bit different, right? Right now, a lot of our services are focused on, products that exist. That happened a little bit before, Solana kind of kicked off. But most of our work today is on projects that are built on Solana as opposed to the core system. So we have a pretty close relationship and are always there inside of the hacker houses and communities, and it just is a place that we like to be, and staying involved with you all and with everyone that's building in the inside of the ecosystem.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, you guys audited Marinade, but you audited a lot of other projects on Solana as well. And like personally, when I see a Kudelski audit, it gives me a certain sense of security when I'm using that platform. So I'm really grateful for the work you've done so far. And yeah, everybody's saying a lot of good things about Kudelski. But since you've done a lot of audits on projects on Solana, and obviously projects on other layer ones, I suppose, it would be interesting to understand, like, when you start an audit, what kind of, even perhaps before you start an audit, when you talk with this project about doing an audit, what is kind of the expectations from your end to be able to, like, what do you expect to be able to do a good audit? Is it anything in particular that you need from the project that is like super relevant, or yeah, what's the general expectations when doing an audit from your end?
So when we look at I
yeah,
can
go
take
ahead.
this one. Yeah, when we look at an audit, when you talk about expectations for a project, I think one of the major misses is that many folks are looking for this stamp of approval, right? That we provide. But I think that the important thing to consider is um, that it's just a point in time, right? And as fast as things move in the space, it's important to continually evaluate and work through security concerns. And the best audits we deliver, engagements we deliver, and I mean we constantly are talking about audit, but there are many other things that we provide in terms of services. It's important to understand the project, working with the engineering and development team to understand like what is trying to be accomplished, especially if it's new and novel or a new way of looking at something. We personally like to spend a lot of time getting to know that project, because it helps us to evaluate what are the threat scenarios there. And I think that Miles and Porter can talk to a little bit about what they see once they're in the audit. But I think that the best way that a relationship starts is by having that conversation, that in-depth conversation, and spending a lot of time there to understand like what concerns a particular project has, so that we can address them effectively, in addition to a standard methodology that we use, which covers a lot of the bases.
Oh, that's really interesting to hear. So there's kind of like an audit before the audit. So you can kind of align the ideas and the goals with the actual audit then, I suppose.
Right, exactly. One of the major things that we really like to do is conduct a threat model or a threat analysis before we actually begin a code review or an assessment. Because the threat model provides us with the framework to assess, right? And spending more time gathering that information is incredibly useful when we actually go into the code review. I think that, sometimes there's a tendency to just go through like the checklist, right? I mean, going back to even application security, as Porter mentioned, you have this top 10 checklist. But if you only cover the top 10, I mean, that's fine, but you're not really doing a complete and thorough audit of a project. So there's only so much you can gain out of looking for common scenarios. The best way to do it is to get really in depth with that project and make sure you understand it intimately so that you can conduct a thorough security review.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's quite interesting to hear. So I suppose there's times where you guys have to decline doing an audit after this first like steps.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because everybody needs an audit yesterday, especially like they want it done right now, and a lot of people come to us and they have like 500 lines of code for a staking contract for an NFT project, and it's something that we can't just pump out immediately, right? Like there are obviously enormous protocols building on Solana every day, and we prefer to focus on kind of the developers, protocols, relationships that are going to have updates over time, that are building something valuable, and that, you know, are, whether it's from a aspect of competence or just persistence on building something properly, that's kind of what we're looking to work with, as opposed to somebody like, oh, we have a staking contract, can you do this tomorrow? Be like, no, we cannot.
Yeah, the
So,
NFT staking utility meme.
right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I suppose that there's a lot of people reaching out to you to get help with audits. Like you guys touched upon previously, like an audit for you guys is a stamp of approval, so it's important for you guys also to also pick your audits, so to say, so you can retain that. So I'm like curious because I mean I understand now that there's a lot of aspects to an audit. It's not only the audit itself, looking at the code, but it's about getting intimate with that project, like you guys mentioned as well. So a lot of these moving parts. But when you're doing an audit, like the whole process of an audit, like the audit before the audit and the audit itself, what would be like the most difficult aspect of it in your point of view?
I think we're going to get a variety of answers here from the whole team, but yeah, I will not start on that one. I'll leave it to Porter or Miles to begin that conversation.
Yeah, and I can try to tackle that one. I know Porter may have a different answer, but just right off the bat, just thinking about just architecture in general. From if when we talk about thinking like an attacker and try to think from an attacker standpoint, you really have to have a full scope and understanding of what the project necessarily is, and how are all the moving pieces working. And so, in order to really attack something, you need to know all these moving pieces, and I think that's a pretty difficult part of the process when understanding a project from from an attacker standpoint is like, okay, what are all the moving pieces and how could I attack it? And so really just getting the full scope and architecture of everything involved, that I think that's a pretty difficult part to have, because in a Web 2 environment, there's a lot of structure behind making sure these things are documented and diagrammed out. But in a Web 3 environment, things are moving rapidly. Changes are being made almost constantly. So being able to lock down the architecture or the structures of a specific program is kind of difficult. So I think that's at least from my point of view, that's kind of something that I struggle with.
I'll add on my answer. I definitely agree with everything that Miles and Ken said. The struggle, at least at first, when you're on a new project for an audit, is just getting familiar with the application. Might not be like something that I've used before, so I try and like actually go use these tools if they're like deployed in production already. Just trying to get familiar with what's going on. And I'll give like a little more technical answer, which is that one of the biggest challenges on Solana specifically is just kind of the account model, and like everything is an account, and trying to go through the code and validate that every account is like what it's supposed to be, and that all the inputs are actually verified. That's probably the part that takes the longest for me in an audit.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that and maybe take one of the less technical approaches here. One of the things that I think we butt up against a lot is terminology in the space. When folks are looking for an audit, I think that there's sort of a standard expectation of a code review. But when folks are asking for a penetration test, or they're asking for an audit, or they're asking for some sort of service or an engagement or something like that, that the expectations of what they want out of that audit and what the service actually provides can be a bit of almost a shock in some conversations. So, one of the things that we do like to do is have that conversation up front about what an organization is looking to gain out of the audit. Is it some sort of attestation? Is it an evaluation of security? And I think that where we landed is that it's really, what we're doing is evaluating the robustness of security within a project, as opposed to this idea of a stamp of approval, or as opposed to this idea of like, if I use this, it's going to be 100% safe, right? So we like to look at it as evaluating the robustness of security within an actual project, and I think that is something of a nuance that is difficult to enter in, especially when somebody engages us initially.
Yeah, one more thing to add on is just that one of the great things about working with Kudelski, or I'll start with when a project comes to us, whether they ask for an audit or a pen test or whatever like buzzword they have, usually they just want like overall security. And a lot of times, like the blockchain code is one piece of that, but there are a lot of other pieces. Usually there's a website, there's a Discord, like we're in the Discord right now. There's like maybe a mobile app. And so one of the nice things about Kudelski is we do have these other teams besides our blockchain team. And so when needed, we can go to our red team. We can go to these experts in these other areas and collaborate with them so that we can get a better like overall picture of all of the security and help with each area.
Yeah, and then there's a bit of a collaboration that goes on. Like I mentioned before, I'm not so much on the technical side, but I understand the finances of a lot of this stuff. So when we get protocols that offer over collateralized lending and margin trading, I do my best to explain to our team of developers, back-end developers, to say, like, here's how I understand this from a user perspective. Like, how can we break this together? So I'm going to use it from the front end. On the back end, you tell me what it looks like, and let's attack it from all angles and see what we can do to secure this thing.
Oh, that's very interesting, and definitely a lot of different angles and perspectives on it from you guys. I was entertained by asking a question regarding like white hackers, but Socrates, you beat me to it there. I see that in the chat, so I'm going to bring that up once we move into the actual AMA part of this little session of ours with Kudelski. There's another question that I think is highly relevant for me and our audience, and I guess for proof of stake chains in general, and that is how it is to do an audit on a stake pool. Stake pools are quite important, in my opinion, on any proof of stake chain. And so not specifically about Marinade, but just in general, how is like the stake pool audit experience? Like, what do you guys mainly consider, or is there any like important pillars in that audit process when you look into a stake pool?
Yeah. So I'll tackle this first, and I think we'll have a bunch of people chime in on this. But specifically, I guess the first thing to kind of on my checklist or my task items is like making sure the calculations are done correctly. There's a lot of calculations and percentages that go into staking contracts. So if the math doesn't check out, you're not really providing the things to your users that you're saying you are. So it's one of those things that kind of really checking the math, making sure there's no loss of precision, and that it's actually doing what it's intended to do.
Yeah, checking the math is definitely one of the like most common errors, I think. Like even as something as simple as like a rounding error, you end up with like one extra thing, but then if you sort of like repeat that process over and over and over again, then suddenly like an attacker can have a bunch of extra funds. And so just checking, that trying to do like safe arithmetic is a little bit of a challenge. And so we're always extra careful anytime, because like all blockchain, like it's money involved. And so you just have to be like so safe about anytime you're doing calculations involving money.
Yeah. And Porter, that just made me think of one more of also just dealing with the transfer of money. So anything revolving around like withdrawal something, or stake, or like placing money into something, those are like key areas that you want to stress out. And in this field, it's kind of, we think of like entry point and exit points. Like those are the things you really want to stress on whenever you're doing a code review or an audit.
And I think this is sort of an aside to the question too. This just goes back to the skill set question and statement. I mean, when we're looking at stake pools, when we look at assigning resources to a particular project, this is why it's so important to understand that intimately, right? Is that if it's a lot of math involved and a lot of arithmetic, and in the case of a stake pool, like we're going to bring somebody that's really good at math, like Porter, to the table to like work on this, right? If it's a browser extension, a wallet, or something like that, we're going to bring somebody to the table that's really familiar with JavaScript and has like that in their head when they're doing the engagement, so that these folks can riff off of each other and actually perform something that is intended and thorough. So I think that one of the important things here is that when we're looking at a particular type of project, like a stake pool, we try to get resources and talent that are really focused on that type of work, even though everything is considered a security assessment.
Oh, that's really interesting to hear. I mean, you guys mentioned that you have more than 4,000 people working in Kudelski, so I guess there's a lot of talent to pick from there.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of folks on the team, and we have PhDs in physics. We've got PhDs in cryptography. We've got folks that are coming straight out of college, like working on development and figuring out just like fresh minds that are in the space. Just it being such a young space in general. People that come from application security that have long careers, doing that type of work and penetration testing. I mean, this type of team really comes from all walks of technical life, and like we put those skills to work.
That's so interesting. I didn't realize that like you somewhat kind of tailor the team for an audit based upon that project. So if it's like a stake pool, you kind of pick those relevant people for that specific audit, if I understood you correctly.
Very much so. And we try, part of it in growing a blockchain team, like this is very much getting those skills to cross over with each other. And we operate very dynamically as a team and teach each other and learn from each other and operate in that way.
Cool. All right. Stake pools audit experience. It's really intrigued to hear that you kind of like do this tailored team for it. So thanks for that answer, by the way. So we're moving into the 30-minute mark here, and those listening now, this here in the session, listening live, you're in the chat too. So we're gonna do a classic thing we usually do, and it's like an emoji lottery. So all of you listening, just write an emoji, this same emoji I'm writing now. Hold on 1 second. In the chat, and that is going to be deemed as your lottery ticket. And then I will spin that wheel like I've done before, the wheel of names, and see who wins. And we'll go with 100 Marinade tokens this time. So just write that MSO logotype in the chat. That will be your lottery ticket. So while we're doing that, I have a last question, and that is, so because you touched upon it more than once, that you provide a whole bunch of different services. And I was looking at your website, and being non-technical, a lot of the language, the terminology was quite difficult to understand. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a tech guy, so I didn't really follow what like services specifically that you were providing. Would you mind like addressing in an Eli 5 fashion for a person like me that don't get this terminology, what kind of services you guys provide?
Sure. I mean, I can speak to the, in sort of the blockchain security services arena. We look at blockchain security as having almost a mirror set of services to application security. It is software development after all. So you can, if you are a developer or you have any experience with like the development lifecycle, we operate at every sort of phase of that lifecycle. So we can help with design through threat model and threat analysis. We can help with development teams in terms of security programs. So if you are a small team or a large team, we can help talk to you about security practices or how to integrate security into your flow, into your CI/CD pipeline, that kind of work. Where we operate mostly is on the right side right now because it's where we get the most requests, which is doing these audits and assessments and engagements. So a lot of those are Solana programs or smart contracts, or at least some sort of DApp or something like that, DEX, things of that nature. Somebody working or a project working on the platform, we can evaluate the code. We can also work to help you remediate that code. And then on the tail end, in terms of one of the things that we're really trying to build out and work on is just helping you to establish within your organization response mechanisms, so that if something does happen, you have some way to react to it appropriately, and a methodology to go through there. So if you can find a space in the development lifecycle that you want to integrate security, that's kind of where how we operate. So most security functions we can do in the blockchain space.
Okay, cool. So I suppose that like when a project does some kind of smart contract update, it doesn't like cover the whole project itself, but you guys can come in there and handle that update, do a quick audit, or quick within quotes, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, it is an option, but one of the things that we try to steer away from is doing these ad hoc like PR reviews if we can help it, right? Because as going back to what we were talking about before, where we need to sort of intimately understand a project in order to give it the a full scope review. It's important that we're involved in some way. So usually we try to work on those sort of little updates on projects that we've already done and have a relationship with the project in some way. Because without that baseline, it can be very hard to establish a security of a change, right? You want that baseline first, that initial audit, that initial review, so that you can say, all right, what's changed since we've done this? And then now that that has changed, now we can sort of see how that affects the rest of the ecosystem or the rest of what we've audited. But it becomes really difficult to just sort of, if we talk about the robustness of the security control, it becomes very difficult to do that in isolation on like 5 lines of code, right?
Got it. Yeah, it's like you guys spoke of earlier. Like the initial phases of an audit was to, get intimate with that project, like understands the ins and outs of it before you're actually able to do the next, like the second step, so to say.
Exactly.
Coffee Capital. I gave you a temporary role so you can write the link. So the ME6 bot doesn't delete that message. So you can share the link if you want, Coffee.
Thank you. It was just a tweet. There's 30 minutes left. Either join this one or come to the next one. I just wanted to. But yeah, I saw that. I get I get it. But,
okay. Oh, well, thanks for that reply, guys. Very intriguing indeed. And we shall move forward to addressing some of the questions from the listeners. And those of you listening now, we've been talking here for about 30 minutes. So if you have any questions that arose during this conversation with Kudelski, now is the time to drop those questions in the chat. And I'm going, while we hope that somebody asks more questions, I'm going to address one from Prodromo. And Prodromo, you usually come with this good questions. So glad to see you here, man. So I'm going to copy the link to that message. So you'll be able to read the question yourself, because I'm going to read it out loud. And sometimes I sound a bit stupid when I do that. So there's the link to that question. And so the question is as follows. I'd be interested in hearing about Discord and its integration, Matrika, Cellbots, whatever. So those kind of integrations. And if you guys do any audits on that. It really seems like a lot of scams are coming from there more than the platforms on Solana themselves. And the Marinade itself relies on them. And we are using Grape, for example, to verify NFT holding. So how do you guys see the current state of Discord and the use of these different kind of bots and integrations and token verifications and so on? And this is a great question. I'd love to hear this one myself.
I can start. So yeah, one of the challenges with Discord is like everyone wants to grow their community and have just like a lot of these Discords just have thousands and thousands of people in it. And so anytime you have like basically that much traffic like coming in, it's hard to sort of prevent like there's it's easy for something bad to slip in. And you can do things to protect like your Discord specifically, like their attacks on sort of like the entire Discord platform itself, their attacks on like specific users. We've seen like Discord moderators be targeted like individually. So even within Discord, there are like a couple different like areas or avenues of attacks, and yeah, it's important to try and protect against all of them.
Yeah, I can add on to that. Discord does have a two-factor authentication that you can use. It's really helpful, especially for moderators and things of that nature. With bots and integrations, I mean, we see this. We could almost ignore the blockchain space completely to talk about how chat integrations affect the security of a communication tool. But evaluating those bots is a supply chain sort of evaluation. You should, if you're thinking about, hey, I want to do this as a consumer, right? You think about, if I want to get into a project, I'm going to go and make sure that this project was evaluated by a reputable security firm, right? So those projects and folks that are running Discord servers should also be evaluating some of the integrations that they're using, and making sure that they're also evaluated for security, not just on the blockchain space, but inside of their bot and their integration. What is their attestation for the security of that bot? Because if that bot gets pwned, then it affects not only them, but everything that they integrate with. Also, I think one of the major things is social engineering is built around a sense of urgency and a call to action, which this entire space is built on. So it's like, it is primed to attack people. So I think that as the space gets more attention, and it has a lot of attention already, obviously, from attackers, you're going to see this just prevail, because it's every single member of the community is a target. And so it's just as much a risk to think about yourself as a community member as a target, and to sort of think about your own security and how it affects the community that you're in.
It's a lot of things to consider there, like the whole community. Now I'm paranoid. But that was a great reply. Thanks for that, and thanks for that question for Dromo. So we'll move forward to the next one, and this is from Brandon, our BTAC. And the question is as follows. I'm going to share the link first up. There we go. So the question is as follows. How do the security experts screen inquiries from email, Telegram, Discord, and to ensure person who they are talking to are who they are, basically? Is there any practices of that you guys can share?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I mean, we do require, so before a relationship starts with a project, we have them sign an NDA, which at the top requires a legal entity and an address where we can send legal notices to. There are some cases where, we kind of know who we're dealing with, and there are some projects out there that they remain, their entities, I guess, are offshore, which is fine too, but we do keep in Telegram contact. We have all of the Twitter contacts as well. You can even pay in crypto for audits, so it's not like we need your bank account information or anything like that, but we definitely do our best to keep it tight, make sure we're working with legitimate people. That's, like I said, that's kind of like our initial vetting process is, okay, is this someone who just wants to build something and this is clearly a rug type deal? Or is this person building with longevity in mind? So we do go through that process for sure. And like I said, the legal address and entity is certainly qualifying. But if they don't have a Twitter, they are uncomfortable showing their face. Usually those are some red flags for us that we keep in mind.
Cool. You heard it, BTAC. That's a way to go about it there. So let's move forward to the next question. And that's question number 3. And that's from Socrates. And that's the one I was kind of wanted to touch upon earlier. And the question is as follows: do you have white hat hackers in your team to check for vulnerabilities in code? And I'm going to add a little bit to that question, and also because I'm wondering, like, has there been like any actual like hacker who turned from the dark side to the light side and joined you guys?
So I guess it really depends on what your definition of a white hat hacker is. But I mean, it's no secret who works for Kudelski. We have a lot of folks, some folks that are on the, on the boards of DEF CON and Black Hat, and work in the space. I myself have been in the security space for over a decade. Breaking things and working for organizations to basically hack their applications and their things for them, even though the blockchain community, in terms of how long the security community has been around, is relatively new. Those folks are people that we are actively working with. Porter had mentioned as well, we have a red team that we lean on internally. That is their entire world, right? They do penetration testing, and they hack for companies and do these types of engagements for organizations. So I guess the simple answer there is yes, we absolutely do, and we continue to hire them.
Cool. So if there's any scary hacker here listening, I mean, you can get a good job here, Kudelski. They are hiring. Yeah, keep that in mind. Turn to the light side. We'll move forward to the fourth question. And this is from Rifo. And the question is as follows: any plans to offer mitigation-based solutions? With another meaning, softening the blow post-hack to complement current prevention-based solutions. And yeah, that's a great question. Is there something that you guys have considered or considering?
Or just clicking the link here and reading it.
Yeah, it's better done. I always read like a retard when I'm reading these questions.
It's definitely something we think about like all the time within our team. And the thing with blockchain is like it's final. Like once the transaction's made on the blockchain, like that's it. And so we have tooling that's kind of underway in the space in the mitigation area, and we're working on it.
Cool. There you heard it. It's being looked at least.
And this is sorry. I was just waiting and reading, but our incident response team, we have a dedicated incident response team, is actively working to help organizations with this type of response mechanism. So when you talk about softening the blow, it's like, how do you appropriately respond to an event? Where this is in sort of the non-crypto world is in breach response and detection, EDR, and just incident response. And so that type of tooling is something like Porter mentioned that we're actively working on, and those types of sort of procedures and response mechanisms that we're helping to train teams to do is something that we actively work on as well.
Cool. You provide like the full package. So, Raifo, I hope you're satisfied with that reply. I know that we had a conversation related to this particular topic earlier today, I think, in the Marinade chat, actually. So this is a great follow-up to that conversation. I'm going to move forward to the fifth question here, and this is again from Socrates, actually. And I thought this was a really interesting question, and I'm going to try to read it so you guys can understand what I'm saying this time. So, how long does it take, on an average, for an audit to be completed? A lot of unaudited projects say that they're awaiting an audit. So, what is the average time? Or is it difficult to say? Is it like based on project to project?
It's really difficult to land that. It really depends on size and the scope of the engagement. But I would say, on average, we're anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks for an audit, and it is very dependent on size. And I think, Kofari, you probably have a lot to say about that as well.
Right. I mean, what we often tell people is that we do a minimum of 10 days worth of audit. So there are rare cases where we do less, depending on the amount of lines of code And if we've worked with a project before and say they need something, like we've audited their code, but they just need a few additions or comments made, or they've made some updates, then we'll do less than 10 days. But in most cases, we're doing a minimum of 10 days, which is 2 business weeks. And like I said, just kind of varies based on how much we're actually dealing with, and whether or not they're on, say, like on a retainer basis, or if they've been referred by somebody. But yeah, it takes, I mean, Porter can probably tell you best how many actual lines of code he can read in a day, but I think he told me at one point he can do up to like 500 lines of code in a day. And but even then, it needs to be looked over by several people and peer reviewed. So we usually just tell people 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, we never have just like one single person on a project. We always have multiple people looking at things. And then if there is code that's like, if you're making your own cryptography and doing something kind of like advanced or different, that's going to take longer. So it really depends so much on the project specifically. It's hard to give an answer in general. And then, but you're right. I think there are a lot of projects in the ecosystem. So maybe Cuffy can say a little bit about like our sort of work backlog. And
yeah, I mean, so people, like I told you, some people come and say, hey, can you do this like today? We want to know how much time it'll take. Oftentimes people are like, okay, we'll just go get an audit somewhere else, because we say, yeah, there's a backlog of 2 to 3 months. And we are working with people who have been in this queue for 2 to 3 months, who are serious and reach out to us months in advance before launching on mainnet to be audited. And those are the people who are definitely prepared for what they're building and know, as updates come along, when to reach out, like say, hey, can you guys double check this code for us, or triple check, just to make sure it's secure for our users. And that definitely legitimizes a project by a lot too, when they're thinking about security months in advance, or even like a year in some cases. That's when you know, like, okay, these people have thought this through. Whereas, like I mentioned, people come in, audit this tomorrow. We'll oftentimes just refer them out to some of our partner firms.
Yeah, and another shameless plug here is also the reason for this, backlog is just the skill sets and the amount of people that's in the security space within blockchain. As many of you probably know, or maybe don't know, cybersecurity is an extremely small space. I guess to say is, well, what I mean by that is not a lot of people are in the cybersecurity space in the Web2 sector. So there's a huge deficit of employees, of people who just are working in the cybersecurity industry. And so going into the blockchain space, that's an even smaller pool. And so now if you have, a lot of projects wanting audits, but there's not a lot of resources to do these audits, is going to be an extreme backlog. So I guess a shameless plug to say, if you're interested, please feel free to, apply to Kudelski Security's blockchain team, or even jumping into blockchain security.
And to tag on that specifically, I kind of handle that. So reach out to me on Twitter, Telegram, Discord, whatever it may be. Go ahead and add me here. If you know Rust, you're proficient in almost any programming language, you're interested in working in for a large corporation that deals with Web3 protocols and Solana and Algorand and Near, seriously reach out. We're hiring constantly. 4,000 employees is not enough. And lots of good benefits and people and opportunities. So shameless plug, like Miles said, but totally hiring.
So it's going to be more than 4,000 people soon in Kudelski, that's for sure. Cool. So I think that was a great reply to that question from all of you guys. And we'll move forward to the 6th question here from Kitcher. And this is quite interesting question. So he writes as follows. In my experience, sometimes companies can be certified by an audit, even if some non-conformities are identified. And are non-conformities public and online somewhere in that case? And also a follow-up to that is, how long should it take for this company or project to fix unidentified risk, if it's not a critical one?
Is this Q6 you mentioned? Let me go up here.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, I can answer a little bit. Yeah, so we put together a report and hand it back to like our clients, and then I believe it's up to our clients to decide whether to make it public somewhere. A lot of Web3 companies actually do publish their audits. I don't know exactly where it's going to be, like on a website or something. We're working that in Kudelski on finding like nice places to sort of share these things. But because Web3 is such like a risky, dangerous space, a lot of projects do end up publishing their report publicly, and you can go read them, see what we do.
Yeah, it's all about how you word things as well, right? So we'll never come out and show so we'll audit something and we won't come out and say this has no chance of ever getting hacked ever. We say we've looked at it for this long and we didn't find any irregularities or vulnerabilities at this point in time on this day. And things change constantly. So if there's like an update with Phantom Wallet and how it connects with smart contracts, that can change your code. If there's an update with Solana and how it interacts with your smart contract, that can change your code as well. So we do careful with our wording. We say, like I said, we've looked at this for 10 days and this is what we found. This is how we fixed it. These are the consistencies in it. And, if something does end up happening, it's because of this. But we'll often highlight that in our reports. And there's actually, I think it's on your guys' website, Marinade, our initial audit with you guys. You guys can use that as reference to kind of see how things are worded.
Yeah, thanks for the reply. You guys heard it. And I think we'll move forward to the next question. But I just want to add something for myself there because I just got intrigued. So, like when you do an audit and there's some kind of low risk, so to say, nothing critical or whatever. From your perspective, like what are your expectations there from the project? Like, do you expect them to fix this, or since it's not urgent, is it something that you guys are not that bothered with?
I mean, we can't tell projects what to do. We can just tell them like sort of here are our findings. But if any projects to the point of like bothering to hire us, they're probably also going to want to fix the mistakes. So we do work a little bit with them if they want to get some assistance in helping fix some of these vulnerabilities. We'll try and like work through that with them because the goal at the end of the day is just to make everyone safe.
All right, cool. Okay, so let's move forward to the next question here. And we'll see if we find time for our last question after this one. So this is from RWWS22. And it is as follows. For the regular investor, how do we evaluate how good or thorough an audit is for a new project? Are all audits created more or less equally? That's a great question, and this is something that I was meaning to ask myself actually, like how a regular investor really understands an audit, like what to look for and how to evaluate an audit. I think that's a really important thing, and not just look at logotype from, for example, Kudelski. Perhaps just read the material that is presented around the audit, right, and try to understand it. So how can we non-technical people or just regular investor navigate this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say read the report and read the methodology inside of the report that talks to about how an organization approaches the audit. You're kind of looking for different things too, right? It's what do you want out of the audit, and what as a consumer or a user do you consider your risk tolerance for a particular project? So if it's something that you're relying on heavily, then it's important to make sure that you're comfortable with the methodology that's presented inside of a report. And that's something that, we really try to make clear, not only to projects that we work with by talking about how we approach their project and taking the time to, sometimes our assessments can be a bit longer. We take the time to understand those projects, and that's why they're longer. If a organization is looking for just like a really quick stamp of approval or like a quick scan or something like that that just covers really high level things, that should be in the methodology, right? Like we looked for these top 10 issues. Yeah, that's something that if you feel like that's enough for you to make a good decision on, yeah, go for it, right? And it comes down to a personal decision about what your comfort level is. If you want like a really robust report and you want to look at that, then make sure that you're reading that report for methodology, what the approach is. Look at those findings for description and recommendations, and look at the findings for things that you feel are sort of decision makers for you.
Cool. I think that's a great reply, and thanks for that. Quite a lesson for myself, actually. So let's try to squeeze in one last question here from our dear Marinator Rice. I can't even pronounce your name, but it's a Sol address, and it's rnyhse. That's all. Okay, there we go. So, and this is about finding talent and hiring people. I thought this was a great question because you guys are open. You're looking for people. So it is as follows. Finding tech talent is always hard, but doesn't make it more hard because people perhaps tend to in general prefer building stuff over just within quotes auditing it. So is there any like friction between building and auditing there when you look for talent?
We've seen there be a kind of a disparity between the two for sure, but I think being able to build is pretty important. You do get assessed by our lead security experts early on in the process just to kind of see how you would attack certain things. We do give you practice problems to see how you would approach breaching something, or just kind of see how you think mostly. There's someone in the hiring process right now who's built a few things on Ethereum, but our blockchain security expert really appreciates the way he thinks and the way he approaches things. So it's super subjective. You don't just go through one interview at all. There are oftentimes, on average, 4 different people you meet with just to assess kind of like a variety of things. And that's everything from your attitude, how you'd fit in with company culture, all the way to how you would solve math problems and how you would approach breaking something, both on the front end and back end.
Yeah. Also, like we are building things internally. We're building security tools. A lot of people on our team have built things before, so I don't think the distinction is like as clear. But also in general, like security is a lot of fun. I mean, you just kind of got to know yourself. Some people do prefer building. Some people prefer, like, I love like all of security and just like protecting things. Like that fits who I am really, really well. And so just kind of knowing yourself, I think different people have different preferences for where their like ideal job is.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that one is kind of from my perspective is I like breaking things, and so like I would not prefer building. I would prefer how to break in and stuff, and so yeah, it's like the security community is very awesome and supportive, and you engage with other people who are also kind of have that same mindset, and so that's kind of how like you find others. Is I hang out with groups of people who also like breaking things and then telling them about the cool stuff we're doing with blockchain. So yeah, just wanted to stress on that point. So it's really fun, and it's a lot of different perspectives that people have in the security and auditing space.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of piggybacks off of what we're talking about in terms of the type of folks that we bring on board as well, right? You are 100% right that finding tech talent to begin with is hard. Finding security talent right now is also difficult, and then finding folks that are interested or even proficient in blockchain or Web3 security is even more difficult. And then finding folks that are like good on novel chains is it's like we're building a team of unicorns, right? So I think that the major thing is we are very interested in how people approach problems, and those folks are are very, very much it's kind of a mindset, right? And they want to break things and they want to audit things. And I think that that is something that we make very clear in the hiring process, that look, a lot of your work is not building things. It is evaluating weaknesses within things that someone else has built. And I think what we really like to do is develop relationships with developers and engineers. I think security in general has gotten this really bad reputation of being adversarial to engineers and developers and builders. And we are very much wanting to fix that. Like, we're not going to sit here and say like you're wrong or whatever. We want to have a collaborative relationship with projects and people to make sure that they're building things securely. And one of the things that we're really good at is identifying weaknesses. Like, that is all we do, is evaluate things for security robustness. And so we're not necessarily as focused on development, at least within this team. And then on the flip side, we hire folks that are part of other teams that do build these things and are developers and are very much security conscious developers. So it's a different mindset. So just because you're a developer and you want to build things or break things, there may still be, a potential role there inside of the blockchain space, building something like security tooling, which we've mentioned before.
Cool. Well, like you guys touched upon previously, I understand now that there's a very diverse set of people working with Kudelski, more than 4,000 people, and you're focusing not only on blockchains and other things as well. So I guess being a builder, well, we would probably fit in with Kudelski anyhow. And to me, it sounds like also reaching that level and working with you guys is like entering like the Formula One of like race cars stuff. So it's probably like a badge of honor to work with Kudelski, the way I understand it at least. And we have gone over time here by 5 minutes. We had some really interesting questions, and this whole session has been very educational. I hope for the listeners, but for me, I can say for sure that I've learned a lot during this hour. And again, I know that time is it's scarce. So, thank you guys for taking your time with explaining what you guys do at Kudelski and what an audit really is. I really appreciate the time here you took for us. So thanks for coming.
Thank
so
you
much
guys
for having us.
Yeah, seriously, this was awesome. We'll do this again sometime in the future for the people that are straggling in or couldn't make it. We'll maybe add some more topics for the next time and go from there. Maybe do a Twitter one, whatever it may be. But yeah, we're here for the community. Ultimately, we love Solana. We go to the hacker houses and just stay present, kind of in the community, for each other. We just want to see everyone do well and retain their money for that matter. So,
well, thanks for all you've done for Solana, and we all should be really really grateful for the work you guys have done. So again, thank you so much, and I'm going to wrap this up then, gentlemen. And for all of you listening who took part in the lottery with the MSO logotype, don't worry, I didn't forget about you guys. After I've ended this stage, I'm going to do that Wheel of Names thing, spin it. I'm going to share the video in the chat, and we'll see who wins the 100 Marinade tokens. So stay tuned for that. And have a good night or a good day or a good morning, wherever you are. And see you around next time. Bye-bye.